Greetings and thanks for joining us again for another biweekly update. My name is Carlos Salinas, and I'm the Regional Director for the U.S. Soybean Export Council in the Americas. A pleasure to have you with us one more time. Before we get started, I'd like to share some information about USEC. As many of you know, USEC focuses in differentiating, elevating the preference, and attaining market access for U.S. soy in human consumption, aquaculture, livestock feed in over 80 countries around the world. USEC members, they represent the soy supply chain, including soybean farmers, processors, commodity shippers, merchandisers, allied agribusinesses, and many important agricultural organizations. USEC is funded by the U.S. Soybean Checkoff, as well as by the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service matching funds and by the industry. And we're very thankful for all the contributions that allow us to keep our program moving forward. We have a brief agenda today. We're going to talk about market structure, crop conditions, pork prices in China, and we'll address soybean quality. I'm trying to touch topics that maybe have not been discussed during the week by many of the different organizations and brokers. I hope you find the information valuable, and I hope that you continue to send me your feedback so we can improve this presentation. Let's talk about market structure, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. And on June 21st, we shared the following information with you. We gave you the prices of soybean meal as outlined in this rectangle as of June 21st. And we told you that the market was inverted, or that nearby prices for soybean meal were higher than deferred prices for soybean meal. And that difference between July and December of soybean meal was close to $20.80 per short ton, or close to $23 a metric ton. And we also explained that this is an expression in the market that tells us that nearby supplies are limited, and the market, through prices, is trying to ration that supply. And we recommended that if you were a buyer around the world with short hedges or basis contracts over the July, to roll those hedges to a different month because there was a potential risk that this could escalate. Unfortunately, our fears have become true, and that relationship has escalated. It's gone from $20.80 a short ton to $40.20 per short ton. Again, you can see how nearby July prices have gone to $368.90 per short ton, and December values have actually depreciated to $328.70. So the market is trying to bridge that gap between old crop soybeans and new crop soybeans, and meal prices are feeling that difference. And certainly it tells us that the market is very concerned on those nearby supplies. And with that in mind, I would recommend all of our meal buyers, specifically in Latin America, which covers a lot of our meal demand, to make sure to step in ahead of time and guarantee that physical supply, because these type of markets are giving us a signal that those supplies may not necessarily be readily available in the spot market, and it's probably wise to step in ahead of time and lock in some of those needs. Here's a visual of the price evolution of that relationship between July and December, and we can see what the market was feeling maybe in April, feeling like there was abundant supplies. And now as we get to the expiration of the July contract and convergence takes place, we find out that those supplies may not necessarily be readily available, and the market is beginning to take prices higher to ration some of that supply. So keep that in mind. I think it's important, and we'll see how the August contract behaves now, because that's going to be the next important thing to keep in mind. And then maybe it'd be a good time to actually roll those hedges in the August as well to the December. Crop conditions were reported by the USDA on Monday. Crop conditions overall are relatively good for soybeans. We are at 67% good to excellent. You can see that on that dark blue line, the thick blue line that we have here. Compared to the previous 10 years, we are at the fourth best situation at this time versus the past 10 years, so not bad. But it is expected, I think, and it's a gradual evolution to see those conditions degrade over time. We'll continue to monitor them, but right now, I think we're in a very good position to have good conditions for good yields moving forward. When you take a look at corn, corn is also a 67% good to excellent, but compared to the previous 10 years, they're at a sixth best position over the past 10 years. We hope that conditions stabilize or they slightly improve, but I think this gives you an idea how soybeans might evolve in the coming future. The U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook issued on June 30th looks I think looks benign. There is some areas where drought development could be likely, Illinois, Indiana, and we do see certainly parts of Kansas as well, and we do see some drought in the eastern areas where we have a smaller soybean production, but yet important. That is also might be affected if you use a little bit of rain. But overall, I think conditions and this weather outlook look okay. They could be better, but I think we'll have to continue to monitor the evolution. Changing subjects, something that drew my attention were the pork prices in China recently, and I'll share some of that information with you. But before we get started, we have to keep in mind that according to the USDA, the Foreign Ag Service, China is expected to produce about 56 million metric tons of pork out of a total world production of 115 million metric tons, meaning that China is roughly or very close to half of the world's production on pork. This is why the prices of pork in China are important, because, in my opinion, they're a major market driver. One thing that caught my attention is a report by the China Ministry of Commerce, and I have dollarized this calculation. But when you take a look at the price of pork and that evolution since May until June, we can see that those prices are very similar to what they were in January of 2023. Obviously, before that, we saw much higher prices, but it's very nice to see that evolution because, again, we are at some of the higher peaks, certainly in the last, in 2024 and 2023, which is a very welcome change. According to a report that was published on SwineWeb, it's called the Genesis Global Market Report. I seldom read it, but I thought it was interesting, some of the comments made by them. And they note the following, and I'll read it to you. Pig prices in 17 provinces across the country have risen across the board. Headlines on online media indicate the market is hot and the industry is at a boiling point. Due to significant liquidation of sows from recycling disease outbreaks or simply financial distress, domestic market supplies have tightened and prices soaring. Often seen as a barometer for the future, the price of 7-kilogram weaned pigs have skyrocketed from 175 won, or $24, back to this time in January to 751 or $103 on June 12th. So the outlook, not only have prices rallied, but I think the outlook is very positive, which would be a welcome change, certainly for soybean meal consumption in the Chinese market. Now, it is also interesting to note that the China's Ministry of Commerce has launched an anti-dumping investigation on pork imports from the EU on June 17th. It's going to be interesting how that plays out and if any duties are imposed and how that flow takes place. It's a significant flow. On this article, they talk about $3.3 billion equivalent. Some people say that's only about 5% of the Chinese pork production, but again, 5% of half of the world's production it's quite a bit, and it certainly impacts markets. Now, another interesting perspective to keep in mind, and talking about China and meal demand and global meal demand, on June 21st, Oil World published their monthly report, and they highlight the growth on soybean meal demand in many countries around the world globally, but also in China, and they highlight that the meal demand is growing from 74.7 million metric tons to 76.3. A welcome uptick, I think, for a large size of the meal consumption around the world, and good to see. So other areas are also showing significant growth. Overall, soybean meal demand going to about 256 million metric tons of soybean meal for 23-24. And changing subjects a little bit, let's talk a little bit about soybean quality, U.S. And Brazilian soybean quality. For the month of May, where we have a bit more volume and data, some of the information shared by our friends in ACCOM in Argentina, we can see that during the month of May, the U.S. exported close to 800,000 metric tons. Moisture content about 1118 based on the data they were able to collect. And when we look at Brazil for May 2024, 1.8 million metric tons of exports with 12.26 moisture, more than a 1% difference in the moisture content. Obviously, in today's prices on a CNF landed China basis, that's a lot of water to take. And I would encourage certainly crushers to consider that the moisture difference as they buy soybeans from one origin versus the other. Another factor that always draws my attention is just a heat damage. When you take a look, obviously, at the U.S., we have almost no heat damage on our soybeans, 0.01 compared to 0.34 out of Brazil. And we see the same thing for total damage. I think the reasons are mainly driven by the climatic conditions in the region. And I think that analysis requires probably a good conversation, but it does have an impact on crush. It does have an impact not only on the solubility and digestibility of the soybean meal, but it impacts crushers in China on their FFA, the acidity of the oil, also on the color. So it's something that, and certainly refining yields as well. So something that buyers around the world should keep in mind when they're choosing between one origin and the other one. I hope the information shared with you was valuable. Again, we look forward to your feedback. I do wish you a very happy 4th of July. The information shared with you was as July 2nd. Today is July 3rd in the morning. And tomorrow I take a plane. I will be in the U.S. for the 4th of July. So looking forward to spending time with some family. Thank you very much. And hopefully I can see you in a couple of weeks.